making things strange.
Okay, I mean, I'm sure that's right. I'm sure that, and you may need to sort of turn it round, you know. I think what I wanted simply to try and illustrate, perhaps I haven't succeeded altogether. I mean, you know, Herbert, like Donne, is a metaphysical poet. I mean, he's using quite deliberately highly disciplined, but also highly complex forms and structures. So I just wanted to sort of unpack in that sentence, you know, how embedded, of course, in his poetry are these tropes, if you like. I mean, they're very deliberately there. Yes, do you want to kind of come in on that for me?
Thank you very much for an absolutely excellent paper. I think the metaphor is that you quite rightly
Yeah.
I would just like to add a very little to this.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
When you unpack it, you find those things.
No, I'm not saying. What I wanted to do was actually, nor am I saying that, you know, Herbert is writing liturgy, because he's clearly not. Although actually, of course, some of his poems we still sing as hymns and so on, so they do work quite well. But it was just to place alongside, you know, that, as it were, architecture, if I can use that word, of a Herbert poem, beside those two Anglican prayers, one 16th century, one 20th century, the Prayer of Humble Access and David Frost's prayer, because actually, of course, the reason I chose those was because both of them have been extremely successful. The Prayer of Humble Access is, you know, deep into the heart of Anglican liturgy, as is David Frost's, which is one of the very few prayers that was actually, you know, composed sort of ex nihilo, if you like, or from the beginning, that has actually stuck and worked. And I wanted to sort of look at why that was the case, why most modern prayers just don't work, a bit like most modern hymns, I mean, occasionally, but not often. And actually, they work precisely because they can sustain that kind of analysis. And I'm not saying that either David Frost or George Herbert or Archbishop Cranmer sat down with a sort of, you know, checklist of Greek rhetoric and rhetorical tropes and say, right, I've got to get an asyndeton, I've got to get an oxymoron in, you know. That's not what I'm saying. But these are, in fact, capable of sustaining complex examination. And that's why they work. That's exactly why they work, and why they can be sustained through endless repetitions, week by week, year by year. And of course, that complex isn't the right word. That careful structure, like all careful structures, it's an architectural notion. It can sustain a lot of things. It can carry a lot of weight. So that actually it can carry a lot of theological weight. It can carry a lot of aesthetic weight. It works very well orally. They're both wonderful prayers to speak, and that's not always the case with prayers. They're actually very durable. And they're also... In the best sense of the word, difficult. They can be unpacked to a great extent. Now, of course, you know, when we say them week by week, you know, you're not operating at that level. But it's like a great piece of music, you know. It works in the same kind of a way, and I suspect that's how poetry very largely works. It actually can carry a lot of weight. But no, I absolutely agree, and that in a way was what I was trying to sort of nudge towards when I was talking about, you know, the metaphorical and the literal. I mean, you know, we're living in a very literal age. You know, we speak, well, it's literally true, or it's just a metaphor. We live in a very literal age, and actually literal language isn't very good at bearing that kind of weight, of the kind that we're talking. It isn't very good at bearing strange weight. Now, the other thing I think about this... I was hesitating over the last phrase, you know, the language they don't understand, because, I mean, I think the first thing, of course, is that precisely indicates the responsibility of people like ourselves in the church and so on and so forth. I use these prayers. We've got an Advent course starting next week, and we're going to be precisely, using these as an opportunity to actually teach, And of course, one of the things about the prayers, let's leave the Bible a moment for a side, prayers is that their vocabulary, as in Herbert very rarely uses a difficult word. He very rarely uses a word that people don't understand. The poems themselves are very dense, but the vocabulary is actually very simple. The King James, of course, as with the Book of Common Prayer in the Anglican tradition, is an interesting phenomenon because it's both a treasure, but it's also a kind of albatross around our necks in many respects. Part of the job, with the King James Bible, or I would actually say with Tyndale behind it, because I'm not actually convinced that King James is great. I think Tyndale is. The real fundamental power of the Tyndale Bible was because Tyndale translated the Bible into the everyday speech. He picked up the patterns of everyday speech, and so people related to it. And that's why, of course, it's Tyndale who gives us all these phrases like falling flat on your face and all that kind of stuff, which is straight out of the Bible, because he was brilliant at kind of, as it were, bringing the Bible into conformity with the kind of patterns and rhythms. And he says that quite openly in his preface to the New Testament. And that survives into the authorized, well, it isn't actually, it was never authorized, the King James Bible. The King James Bible survives because it was a political event in 1611. I think that one of the reasons that the King James has survived, it was because it was a gift of Coverdale and Tyndale, who actually had the knack of putting everyday speech, just as Shakespeare does, into biblical. And we've never been able to repeat that.